Today is Wednesday, January the 18th, 2012, SOPA Blackout Day. I'm Matthew T.G.
I'm Heath Mulligan.
I'm Steve Stanley.
And I am, you guessed it, Tony Casey. Welcome to the Techology Show, a weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between. The world's only user-antagonistic podcast. This is episode 140. Woohoo! Hey, listen, I want to welcome to the show today Chad McCullum. If you don't know Chad serves as the lead pastor of Compass Church in Byron Center, Michigan. Chad and a small group of his friends planted Compass Church in 2006 with a vision of seeing the entire region permeated with the love and the message of Jesus Christ. Chad received his theological education from Indiana Wesleyan University, and if you can't go to Southern, then we recommend Indiana Wesleyan. As exciting as ministry has been, Chad's primary passion is his wife, Julie, and their three children, Chase, Miles, and Jackson. Chad recently stated, quote, I want to be part of leading Compass Church into the future and helping other churches as well. But that's not where my leadership starts. My spiritual leadership begins in my home with my wife and my children. After God, they come first. Chad enjoys golf, cup of coffee with friends, stand-up comedy, and by the way, in 2008, Chad was named one of the 10 funniest people in Grand Rapids. He also enjoys following University of Michigan athletics and reading anything pertaining to leadership and the local church. Chad, welcome to the show today.
Hey, it's great to be here. The bio was written by Mark Gorvet, so it sounds even better than I really am.
Nice. We'll get him to write all of our bios.
Yeah.
All right, before we jump into the interview today with Chad, let's turn it over to Master TG for a few instructions about a book giveaway.
So you got till 9:30, folks, 9:30 to enter for the copy of Less Clutter, Less Noise that we'll be giving away. You can enter 2 times. Once on Facebook by going to our Facebook page and posting on our wall that you'd like to be in the entry. And then, again, you can enter on Twitter by tweeting to Heath, who's monitoring. He's like,
Yes.
I wish we had the newsroom sound.
Yeah.
Monitoring Twitter over there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Being sure that everything's fine and dandy on that end. And we've got a very good list of people so far, but you got 2 chances to get your name in. So please take advantage of them.
Is this a game of chance? Is that
And
what
then-
we're talking about?
Yes.
No. Well, yes. And then at
chances.
the end of our show today, we will announce the winner. Just contact us
Of
by
our lottery.
emailing thetechologyshow at gmail.com with your email address so that we can get that book to you. And we'll talk more about it towards the end of the show.
See.
Tony.
All right, Steve, I'm kicking you off the show next week.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
thank
enough
you.
of
You know what I just realized? I have control here. I could just turn that knob right there, and all that noise could go away. I just realized that just dawned on me.
See, look at that. And he knew you turned it down so he wouldn't talk, just to give you the satisfaction.
Now, folks, if you're listening to this, you notice that we mentioned Chad is a fan of Michigan athletics. You know, you guys all know Tony is a fan of Wisconsin athletics.
Right.
And he zipped through the show opening and totally skipped over the fact that his Packers
We lost.
for
What do
you
want
choked.
Whoa.
You
Say that
choked
again.
We
Say
choked.
it again.
No,
We choked.
and I feel bad because I was pulling for the Packers because no one likes the Giants. Even people in New York don't like
At
the
least
Giants.
the coach stayed on the field for the whole game.
Yes,
with
thank
his
you.
players.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
goodness.
But that's a UNC
know, guys,
story.
You know
I don't
now.
know.
Oh, go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, I don't know if you have the State Farm commercial down your way where Aaron Rodgers does the discount double check.
Yes.
My 6-year-old, he's been walking around the house, and anytime he does something right, he'll be like, discount double check, baby. You know, so the other day he shoveled the driveway because we have snow here.
Oh,
and
wow.
he shoveled the driveway. He came in, and he's just like, discount double check. That'll be $5.
Well, you know, you talked about the Roy Williams in North Carolina leaving the floor and leaving the 5 walk-ons on there. You know, now, because of that, instead of being a yellow-bellied or having a yellow spine, it's now Carolina blue spine. It just shows you're a coward.
All right, well, we're going to let you flesh that out for us
That's
over the
right.
coming weeks and months here on the Techology Show. We're like elephants. We forget nothing.
Yes.
All right, so Chad, you like rooting for the University of Michigan. You guys had a good victory over Michigan State, didn't you?
We did. Yeah, my wife actually has a master's degree from University of Michigan, and when she enrolled there, she has a master's degree in public health, and when she enrolled there, she said, "Are you okay if I take classes there and get this degree?" And I said, "Yeah, as long as we get football tickets, I don't care." And so we had student tickets. So for 2 years, we went to all the home games. It was a blast.
Wow.
And took my son to his first game last year, and met a buddy of mine actually that came up from Charlotte, North Carolina there, and it was a riot. It was just a good time. I think they were playing Wisconsin. I might be wrong. But
hey, listen, I'm curious. Did you think Rich Rod needed to go or not?
Yeah, I liked Rich Rod. I'm a little bit like the people in the average Wesleyan church that when one pastor leaves and the new pastor comes, everybody's got a favorite pastor, and chances are the new guy isn't him. So when Rich Rod came, I was like, after one, I was at the game when they got beat by Appalachian State, though. And I'll tell you what, oh, my word.
That's when Carr was coach.
Yeah, that was the previous coach. That was when I gave up on the team, though, for a little while. And then I came back to Jesus. So,
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's jump into our interview with you. First, tell us a little about how God called you into ministry.
Yeah. I grew up in the Wesleyan church. I was predestined to be Wesleyan. My father, Chuck McCollum, was a Wesleyan pastor for many, many years, still is ordained in the Wesleyan church. My roots just go deep in the Wesleyan church. My grandfather was a general superintendent, Bob McIntyre, and so I've just got a lot of, I look at the Wesleyan church and I jokingly tell people sometimes that I could probably backslide and disappoint my father less than if I just left the denomination altogether. So,
just stay in the denomination and be an unbeliever. Is that what you're saying?
As long as I'm going to a Wesleyan church. And so I grew up in it. I was just steeped in it. And really, though, growing up in a pastor's home, I loved being a pastor's kid. I know a lot of people say, I didn't like being a pastor's kid. I really liked it. Like, I got Christmas cards from all the old ladies in the church and all those kinds of things. I just loved it. And really thought I was going to be a social worker. That was my heart desire. I wanted to serve the poor, and had been on a couple of missions trips to like inner city New York City, places like that had really gripped my heart. And ultimately, God had other plans, and I remember it was coming up on my senior year of high school, the summer before my senior year, and we were having family camp, Indiana North District. Steve Wingfield was preaching, and it was a Sunday night, and I had told my dad, I said, "Dad, I'm not going to go tonight." And that was just, I might as well have cursed at my father. He's like, "No, we go. Like, you will be there, And my dad was on the platform. He was assistant superintendent, and so I remember going and sitting on the back row of Fairmount Campground Tabernacle, and at the end, I don't remember what Wingfield preached on that night, but at the end, Wingfield gave an invitation, and it was one of those, God is working in someone's heart, and we're just going to wait. We're just going to wait, and I remember standing there thinking, well, whoever God's working on better go to the altar, because we're going to be here all night. And finally, I realized, like, it was me, like I was the one holding up the social hour that happened after the service. So I walked the aisle, and my dad came down to the altar and knelt with me. And I looked at my dad and I said, "Dad, I want you to know I didn't backslide. I just think I'm called to ministry." And that was kind of where I just said, "Okay, God, whatever you have," and I just offer myself to you. So
tell us a little bit about your journey since that night when you were called. Tell us about your journey in ministry.
Yeah, I went to college at Indiana Wesleyan. It was in my own backyard. I lived in Marion and hung out on campus as a high school kid and all those kinds of things. And quite honestly, I loved college. I didn't like high school as much. But coming out of college, all I wanted to do was preach. I mean, that's just, I wanted a church somewhere where they'd let me, preach on Sunday and love the people and all of that. And when I graduated, it was just like banging my head against the wall. There was just nothing available. I remember talking to district superintendents, and they would say, "Wow, you're young and you've got energy and a decent sense of humor. You ought to be a youth pastor." And I would say, "I didn't even like being a youth. Like, you don't want me being a youth pastor." And So finally, ended up working for 2 years out of college at Indiana Wesleyan in the admissions office, and traveled for the school and all of that. And that's really, I developed a friendship during that time with Ron Kelly, who was district superintendent in West Michigan at the time. And I still think of him. He's kind of like the godfather. He's a special person to me. I remember where we stood when I said to him, and it was a snowy winter day in Lansing, Michigan, standing outside a restaurant called the Flapjack, when I said to him, hey, if a guy wanted to come up here to West Michigan, like, what would he have to do? And because I just had fallen in love with the district and the people. And he said, well, when do you want to start? And what was before just banging my head against the wall, now was like, literally, I think 2 months later, maybe 6 weeks later even. I might be wrong on the time frame. That's where my wife helps me. I was preaching on the weekends at a church, doing my day job at Indiana Wesleyan, and ultimately went to pastor that church. That was an 80-80 church. There were 80 people in the church, and the average age was 80 years of age.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Well,
So served there, and then on staff at a church as well, a larger church, and then pastored for 6 years in a little town called Burnups, which the church was larger than the town. The town is just small town USA, and then planning the church now. So,
well, on that, just tell us a little bit. So, how did you get into church planting? And with that, I mean, did you ever envision yourself planting a church?
No, it's funny because there are certain people that I look at and I think, wow, they were born to plant a church. I mean, they'll plant 20 of them. Chris Conrad's our district superintendent.
Yeah.
And I think people like Chris, they plant churches. But I always thought of myself, I just thought, well, I'm just a pastor. I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way, like I'm just a stay-at-home mom or something. But, I pastored by and large at churches that had been around 150 years, and I wasn't going to kill them, to be honest, which had a certain amount of freedom to it. And so I was on our district board, and I am on our district board, but this was years ago now. I was at a district board meeting, and Pastor Wayne Schmidt mentioned at the close of the meeting, we were just praying for different things, and he said, we'd really love to see a church plant happen in Byron Center. And Byron Center's south edge of Grand Rapids, Michigan,
Okay.
Next town over from Kentwood. He said, we'd love to see a church plant happen in Byron Center. We're just praying about that. And honestly, I had never thought about myself personally planting a church before. I loved the idea, but it's a little bit like jumping off the high dive. I'll let everybody else do it. I don't have to do it. And I just remember it was like God put his hand on my shoulder and said, you need to ask him about that. And so I went up to him afterwards. I said, Wayne, you know me. Like, he actually had some shoestring relatives at our church out in the countryside where I was. I said, you know me pretty well. You've heard me preach. Like, I would be open to talking about that, praying about it, but I'm not, like, my resume is not current. I can't tell you who's looking on Wesleyan.org right now for jobs or anything like that, but I'd be open to talking about that. And so that started kind of the dialogue and the conversation, and it was a long process. And to be honest, I kind of fought it along the way. I was a reluctant church planter. I really was.
Interesting.
To the point where Wayne just kept saying, when you're clear and your wife Julie's clear, then we want to get behind it. But if you're not clear, then don't do it. And I would always say, well, what does clear feel like? What's clear? And he would say, it's that feeling you had when you looked in your wife's eyes, when you looked in Julia's eyes and you knew you wanted, to spend the rest of your life with her. It's that feeling. And ultimately, it was a Thursday night, and we had Janetta Herrera, who scares me, and I hope if she's watching.
She scares everybody.
Janetta was my 7th grade teacher. That is just bizarre to me. But we had Janetta, who was over at our house, and Jim Wood was there as well, which between the two of them, we could dismantle the denomination handily. But they were over at our house, and Janetta said, if Kentwood Community Church didn't give you any money to plant that church, would you still plant the church? And I said, and she's good like that, she'll get under your skin. I said, I hadn't thought about that. Like, in my mind, of course they're going to give us money. And she said, well, I would think that you would want to make sure in your own heart, you would do it whether anybody went with you or not, whether they gave you money, whether they said, we're not with you. I would think you'd want to say, I'll do this, though none go with me, still I will follow. And literally, I laid awake that night thinking, is that how clear I am? Like,
Wow.
Is that where I'm at?
Wow.
And I remember waking up the next morning and I said to Julie, let's do it. I think we're supposed to do it, whether people give us money, whether they don't, whether churches engage people in the process, whether they don't, whether, if I kill it at the end of 18 months, let's do it. And so we did. So I called Wayne that day on that Friday morning and said, hey, we're in. Like,
Cool.
I got to name the thing now, but we're in.
Wow.
So,
Well, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about what it's like to pastor a new church or a church plant as opposed to an established church with all the cushy.
Cushy.
You fill in the blank.
yeah, cushy people. Yeah, it's totally different. The church that I came from was this little town called Burnips, and the church had grown there. I had a multiple staff, full-time people. We didn't have a ton of money in the bank, but we had some money in the bank. We had buildings and parsonages, and I was like the slumlord of Burnips. I mean, we had, and I remember, like, what was so unique to me is that there would be certain people. I remember years ago, when the Wesleyan Church rolled out LDJ, they did this little tour thing, and they had, I forget the guy's name, I think it was Wood. Last name was like Gene Wood maybe or something, I don't know. But anyway, he'd written a book called Turnaround Churches.
Yeah, I think that's right, Gene Wood. I think that's right.
And I think he had a chapter in the book called the People Who Cannot Leave, something to that effect. And I read that, and I remember thinking, that was my established church. Like, I had certain people in the church that I love dearly. They might not like my preaching. They might not like the music. They might not like any number of things, but they couldn't leave. Like, it was so ingrained in the pattern of their life. And what I've learned at a church plant is that people can leave. And so, people will say, well, this doesn't work for me, and they'll go somewhere else or whatever it might be. And so I've seen that as a difference between the two. Initially, honestly, I'd always followed somebody in every other job I was in. And so this may sound rather insecure of my own self, I don't know, but you don't have anybody to blame.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Any problem I have right now at Compass Church happened on my watch. And I don't like that very much sometimes. When I went to Burnips, I followed Carlos Fletcher, who he was 72 when he left. I was 27 when I came. You can do the math on that gear shift. And he moved to Georgia to plant church.
Right.
He's gonna die in the pulpit.
He's
really
an
think
awesome
he
guy. He was, I think, my mom's pastor growing up for a while, and still to this day is like. He's so energetic for such an old guy. If you don't know him,
He scares me. Like,
he's awesome.
He's got the metabolism of a lab rat. Like, his heart has to be like at 120 or something. But I remember following him, and there would be people who'd say, "Oh, Pastor Fletcher did this or this or this," and I used to joke with him. I used to say, "Pastor Fletcher, you made my job so easy for the first 18 months I was here." Well, why is that? Because I just blamed you for everything I said. And in the church plant, something doesn't happen. Why don't we have this? What's with this? Why don't we have volunteers in this area? Well, we just don't. And that's kind of that's been a shift. So I think that there's similarities though too. I think the similarity is that you still have to convey what you're about. You still have to clearly lead people somewhere through the scriptures. You still have to engage people in mission. And I tell people when we started, we had about 80 men, women, and children that came from Kentwood to be part of the thing. And when we started, the number of people were like, wow, that must have been great. They gave you those people. And I would always tell my friends, they didn't give me those people. Like, I had to sit at their kitchen table and convince them that setting up a chair on Sunday morning and then having to stack their own chair after the service and all of these things was going to be more enjoyable and more meaningful in their life than going to the mega mall that is Kentwood Community Church. And I love Kentwood Community Church, but they have screens that are bigger than ours and budgets that are way bigger than ours. And so here I am saying, hey, you get to come to a gym that doesn't even have air conditioning in it in the summertime, and we're going to have church. It's going to be meaningful. So.
Let's shift gears here a little bit from church planting to talk more about the church in general. I'm just curious, Chad, as to what you perceive are the challenges facing the church in America today.
Yeah, I was thinking of when we talked about that. I was thinking about two kind of lenses, because I'm a Wesleyan. Like I tell people, I was born into the Wesleyan Church by no choice of mine. It just was the way that it is. It is who I am. But I'm here today because I really strongly am and believe I'm a Wesleyan. I love the Wesleyan Church, and the thought of being a part of anything else, is crazy to me. And so, for me, I think about like what is it in the Wesleyan Church, but I also think like the broader church as well. And for me, I think the thing that came to mind is, and this may sound a little odd because maybe it sounds odd to me. I really believe we've trivialized God, and by that I mean I just heard Steve Deneff last week, I think it was. He spoke at our for one night of our kind of district gathering thing, and he talked about Isaiah 6 and how what drove mission in Isaiah's life was his view of God. And
good.
I read a book a while ago called The Trivialization. I think it was called The Trivialization of God or something like that, by some seminary professor. I didn't understand half of it because I'm a pretty simple guy. But what I did understand said we've really watered God down to the point where he's our buddy, he's our pal. And the statement Deneff made a couple weeks ago that really rocked me was, if you want to have people move to outreach, if you want to move people to being outwardly focused, missional people, the way you do that is you lead them to a greater understanding of who God is and a greater esteem for who God is. Isaiah sees God high and lifted up, and then he's saying, "Here am I, send me." And I just thought that was powerful. When I think about the Wesleyan Church, I really my heart for our church is that we would just consistently say, God, we want your spirit to be at work in our hearts and lives. And, I really believe, like I'm a bit of a closet charismatic, I'll admit it. And so my DBMD may be after me, but when I think about what God might do through people's hearts and lives, sometimes I think we discredit it by just doing what works instead of saying, God, what do you really want to do?
Yeah, no question.
That's where I really love Dr. Lyon. I think Dr. Lyon, and if she's brought anything to the denomination, I love hearing her just talk over and over again about the power of the Spirit and the working of the Spirit in our lives. And that's something fresh. One other thing I would add real fast. I live probably 15 minutes away, maybe 20, from a church where a certain pastor wrote a book about that was rather universalistic, related to hell. And I really think
what are you talking about, man? This is crazy talk.
We know of no such book.
I really think there's a subtle universalism to the church these days. Oh, everybody's saved, everybody's going to heaven, and whether I read the book, I did read the book. I didn't buy the book. I checked it out of my library. I let my taxpayer dollars do that for me. So, yeah.
Hey, Chad, you just mentioned a couple of great people, Steve Deneff, Dr. Joanne Lyon, but who are some of your heroes in ministry and why?
Yeah, my father, I have huge regard for, just the consistency of his life. Dennis Jackson, who's with Global Partners, he's an area director over in Europe. He was a pastor here in our district. He took me under his wing when I came to the district. When I moved to West Michigan, I called the pastors of the 5 largest churches in our district, and I just said I'd like 30 minutes of your time. I heard Maxwell had done that, so I thought I could do it too. Maxwell offered them all $100. I just said I just want 30 minutes of your time. So, and so I sat down with the Paul Hanses of the world and these folks, and Dennis really took me under his wing. And I love Dennis Jackson. I don't know any other way to say it. We named our youngest son after him. That's why we named him Jackson. And
Wow.
I just adore him and what he's meant in my life. I also think my grandfathers, both of them, my grandpa McIntyre, I have huge regard for.
Yeah.
And my grandpa McCullum, who he taught for years out at Bartlesville, Oklahoma Wesleyan now, and just really have high regard for them. And really too, and I'll have to make sure my Uncle Phil sees this, but I adore my Uncle Phil McCollum. He was part of the Wesleyan Church, went to Nazarene Theological Seminary, and now pastors an independent church out in Seattle, which they're having a snowstorm out there. He sent me a text last night saying, I need to know how to deal with snow, and I just told him, ignore it, just ignore it. So, but he had part in helping write Heaven is for Real. If you read in there, Burpo talks about talking to Phil McCollum, and it was Phil who first kind of helped him write some of those stories down, and he's just a huge encouragement in my life too. So,
Speaking of books, what are you reading these days?
I read Sunday afternoon. I read The Little Gingerbread Boy to my boy.
Very good. Love that book.
Do they have that in a version we could understand here on the show?
Cliff notes.
Does Audible.com have that?
Can I translate that into Greek?
No, I'm thinking
I need
go the
Audible
other way.
to read to my kids at night. So no, I read Onward by Schultz because it was in the dollar bin for Willow Creek. I saw a little.
How was that?
That was really good. You know what I loved about that book? About, I don't know, a quarter of the way in, he's talking about wrestling with. He felt like, in essence, Starbucks had lost
Yeah.
its soul.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
selling
he-
breakfast.
Yeah, and so he's like, what do we do? And one of the guys in the room, gals in the room, said, we can close this thing down. We're going to close it down. We're going to retrain everybody in the way we make espresso. And I was fascinated by reading about how, what goes through this guy's mind when he walks into a Starbucks, the way that it smells, the way that it
Yep.
looks.
Yeah.
And what I was reminded of is that leaders notice things, pastors notice things in churches that the average person doesn't. They just, I remember, Wayne Schmidt teaching me years ago, watch for the cringe factor, Chad. Like if there's a cringe factor in a service where, somebody makes a comment that's a little off, some people may not, they'll just roll, but that's the stuff people notice. And that was kind of that really caught me. I think I'm also reading, I'm reading right now, Fresh Wind, Fresh Fire again.
Oh, yeah.
Just-
Good book.
I think that book
Just
is
a classic, man.
yeah. You just pull that out, and then I'm also with my devotions in the morning. I'm reading my Wayne Schmidt "Leading When God Is Moving" book again.
Nice.
Just because it's just really, really good. And I tell Wayne, I'm like, Wayne, I can't, like, that book is so good, I can't believe you wrote it. I mean, that is and it's excellent.
You're not
So,
getting any kickback on royalties here, are you, Chad?
there are no Amazon links on my
Yes. Devin, did you hear
Yeah,
that?
yeah, Steven in the chat room, are you listening?
that was a grenade thrown to Shippensburg, Pennsylvania.
Oh,
Very
lob.
Hey, Chad, we do have a question in the chat room, and it is, what has been for you the most frustrating thing as a church planner?
The most frustrating thing. Wow. I think we would love to say, wow, we are all about mission. We are all about vision. We are on a movement. The fact is, people are pretty consumeristic. And by the way, pastors are too. I mean, I think that's probably why, for some reason, pastors move a lot. It's been hard for me dealing with consumeristic mindsets when we're trying to be on mission. That's challenging. Honestly, I think the other thing that's been so hard for us, at least, is how do we stay on mission in, what's the best way to say it? How do we keep people focused on reaching people, but realizing that doesn't mean you ignore your own heart and your own soul? And The last thing I want to do is grow some great big church and then sit back and realize we did it at the, while we ignored the care of our own heart and our own lives.
Yeah.
And so I've had to learn the hard way. I mean, I've had a few really dark nights through this planting thing where I've had to say, okay, God, I have to stay fresh with you. I have to stay committed to you. And that's anywhere, but in planting, keeping people aware of that. Hey, we're moving forward, but while you're moving forward, don't forget your own heart. So
Good, very good. Well, listen, we're gonna keep moving on the tracks here. I think, Chad, you're gonna hang with us for the rest of the show, aren't you?
as long as you'll let me. I'm like the two guys on the Muppet Show up in the gallery.
Waldorf and
Then you're gonna be perfect.
I just want to say this: welcome home, son. You found your place.
If you know how to lob scuds, you're gonna be just fine for the rest of the show.
Well, speaking of that, I wanted to ask you, Chad. You talked about, in the pre-show, we talked about stand-up comedy. How did you get going with some of the stand-up, and like, how do you come up with some of your material? I mean, I know being a pastor, you get a plethora of material, but what are some things you do as far as stand-up?
Wait. You get a what? That's stand-up material right there.
That's a big word for Heath.
Would you say I have a plethora of pinatas?
Oh man, yeah. You know what? The comedy thing. I have a father who will watch this probably on YouTube later tonight, and so I'm going to be careful what I say here.
Oh, say no more.
But he's wound. One day, I remember when I graduated from college, instead of having an open house, I invited some professors that were meaningful to me over to the house for dinner, and Dr. Bud Bentz was one of those. And I remember Dr. Bud Bentz saying, "Chad, I cannot figure out how someone as lighthearted and carefree and sanguine as you came from someone wound as tight as your father," he said. And so part of it's just I've always had that kind of sense of humor thing. I started doing comedy, though, at an open mic. I was at a Michael Jr. show at our comedy club here in town, and Michael Jr. is a great, funny comedian from Grand Rapids, Christian guy. And somebody said, "You ought to do comedy." And I'm like, "No, you're crazy." So that was about, I don't know, that was when we started the church and really started going to the comedy club to connect with people who are far from God. And, honestly, if I figured if Bill Hybels can have a boat that he can go sailing on with unsaved people, I can go tell jokes and, engage in that arena a little bit. So, it's been good. The funniest thing, I was one of the 10 there. That was the first year they did Funniest Person in Grand Rapids. I finished 4th, and when I told my wife, she said, "How'd you do?" I got home that night late, and I said, I finished, or she said, "Did you win any money?" And I said, "Well, first place won money, second place won money, third place won money, fourth place didn't win any money." And she said, "So you're the first loser is what you are."
Oh, man.
Yeah, you leave the jokes to me. So that's what it was.
All righty. Well, listen, let's move on here. Any other instructions in terms of the giveaway?
Yeah, it's closed now. No more entries. We're not accepting anymore. The document is locked and
Such
loaded.
a legalist.
It is locked.
Such
I can't
a
even
legalist.
see it now.
Loaded,
No mercy.
And we will be. You want to do it now or later?
Let's do it now.
Gonna do it now? I'm ready.
All right,
You
go
ready?
ahead.
All right, here we go. This is for a copy of Less Clutter, Less Noise by Kem Meyer. Out of all of our entries, I'm hitting the random number generator right now, and it has generated generate
7 sheets.
No. Man.
number 12, Al Thompson.
Al Thompson
is the winner. So,
right.
Al, be sure to email us your email address
You can
at
call him
thetechnologyshow@gmail.com.
Nice.
All right, and that's going to play into our download of the week. Are we ready for that?
We
Yes.
are.
Hey, well then here it goes.
Download of the week.
I always like that audio.
All right, our download of the week is the Kindle app. We have discovered over the last few weeks that some people don't realize that you don't have to have a Kindle device to take advantage of Kindle books.
That's right. So the Kindle app is an application that runs on Macintoshes, PCs. It runs on Android phones. It runs on iOS phones. I think it also, I don't know if they have a BlackBerry one or not, but There's also the cloud reader. You can read right out of your web browser at read.amazon.com and get all of that content that way. So the reason that we bring that up, like we said, our chat room was confused the other week. We were talking about giving away a Kindle copy, and some people are like, well, I won't enter because I don't have a Kindle. Well, if you have a computer, you have a Kindle. If you have an Android phone, you have a Kindle. If you have just about any electronic device, you have a Kindle. And that's something that I love and admire about Amazon for working so hard to open up support for so many different devices to let you have access to these things in so many different ways.
And there's a ton of free books available.
Oh, yeah.
Plus, if you will pay attention to Steven Sheets' blog, he will regularly give you a link to a free book.
Steven Sheets makes more off this show than
that's what we're saying. Steven Sheets makes more money off this show than we do. We lose money on this show, and he makes money somehow.
Steven's always designing T-shirts. I'm surprised he doesn't have one with Dr. Joanne Lyon on it yet.
Or the Techology Show for that.
Or the Techology.
Yeah. With an Amazon affiliate link right below it.
Let me tell you something I think is cool with the Kindle and the Kindle app and all this stuff. I discovered that if you use Evernote, you can take when you highlight, when you make notes in a Kindle book, that automatically goes to the cloud, and you can actually access your own Kindle account.
Yes.
And then through Evernote, and this was what I would recommend, you put the add-on, like I use Firefox, so you put the add-on for that, the Evernote add-on, and it gives you a clipping device. Mm-hmm. And so you go to your notes, you can take all of those notes, clip it into Evernote, and take 10, 15 minutes, go through, add all your keywords from that book. And now you have all those quotes. You can copy and paste them. They're there.
Yes.
So to me, Kindle
searchable.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's really a great thing. I mean, you don't get that in a hard copy book, being able to have your highlights so easily
do that with
searchable.
A highlighter. Absolutely not.
You remember the days of highlighting something and then inside the cover of the book, like making an index of all the different spots that you highlighted.
Although
that's what I did.
A few weeks ago, Josh Leroy at theloniusclemens.com talked about banning, said if you're using an e-reader or Kindle, he's like, you're just not a real person. He's like, give me a book, go to the library. So I totally
Who said
disagree.
that, Matt Leroy?
Josh.
Oh, Josh said that. All right, we'll get him.
I knew I didn't like Josh.
All right, well, let's keep this thing rolling and go to They Said It.
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or HGH.
I took the initiative in creating the internet.
The Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
I'm not a crook.
If you know what you're doing here, slide out.
And the pieces come flying.
Today's young people are impressed by the position and appearance of these celebrities. Simply because of their popularity and prominence, they are perceived as heroes and role models. When celebrities express appreciation to God for their talents, this generation will see it as aspirational. Joseph L. Price, Whittier College religious studies professor, talking about the impact of celebrity Christians like Tim Tebow and Justin Bieber. Source, Fox News.
By the way, makeup needs to touch this spot up on my forehead where I hit it. The Christian owes his ultimate allegiance to God, and if any earthly institution conflicts with God's will, it is your Christian duty to take a stand against it. You must never allow the transitory, evanescent demands of man-made institutions to take precedence over the eternal demands of the Almighty God. Who do you think? Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., from his 1956 article entitled A Letter to American Christians, source Ed Stetzer, the Lifeway research blog.
So, Obama has thrown in his lot with Silicon Valley paymasters who threaten all software creators with piracy. Plain thievery! Rupert Murdoch calling into question the Obama administration's warning that it would not support the Stop Online Piracy Act, otherwise known as SOPA. Source, The Guardian.
And finally, a video for your viewing pleasure.
The
this definitely challenges the status quo. It's incredible to see Vizio really start to turn heads with some of these new devices.
PCs don't have to be boring. When we look at what consumers use PCs for, it's as much entertainment as it is productivity. And when Vizio looked out at the competitive landscape, we saw a sea of sameness. We saw a gap in the marketplace to actually design a product for consumers that got them excited about using their PC again. And so we're coming out with a very innovative product line for consumers to be as much an entertainment device as it is a productivity device. Every product has 1,000 stories behind it, countless hours and trips to Asia and conference calls, and we set some very lofty goals of making this a very desirable consumer product where design was king. If you look at the all-in-one design, first of all, it doesn't look like a PC. Second, you'll have this hinge that comes down to a base that most people can't believe there's actually a PC down in the base. And then there's a hinge that goes into the back of the product, and it goes right up into the back of the display. And that hinge is actually embedded so you don't see anything when the consumer is actually using it.
You really see where they bring their experience in understanding what the industrial designs are that consumers really value and also feel much more personal as part of their consumer lifestyle.
Every single angle of the product has been considered. The craftsmanship that goes into it, the construction from just 4 pieces of aluminum that are anodized with a soft touch finish on the back, the precise lines emphasizing how thin it is, giving it a sense of minimalism with a lot of attitude.
Somebody got Apple's playbook.
Now listen,
I don't know.
Y'all are being cynical here, but I'm telling you, this is the first PC line where, I mean, and you're right, they stole a page right out of Apple's book, but they get it.
Yeah.
I think that these will be successful. Now, we'll see the price point on them, but these are PCs.
But, I mean, think about, this is what they're banking on. We want to see people excited about getting on their PCs. I'm just thinking, I think you missed that boat, buddy. Or maybe they're trying to put that boat back in the water.
Well, again, I've said before, I have Apple products everywhere. So, I mean, the testimony in my life
You
is
say
Apple.
that, and then you have before you a hacked
HP
IBM
touchpad.
ThinkPad from
Yeah.
1972 and a hacked HP touchpad.
And if memory serves, the devil had Apple products in the garden.
No, we don't know that. It was just a fruit.
Oh, you're agnostic now, are you? Okay, I got
it was just a fruit.
Listen, I'm just saying that I don't know if Vizio will be successful or not. I think they get it. I think they get design. I'm anxious if they have the right price point on here. I think that they will do.
The other beautiful thing is they have a great relationship with Walmart. So they already have a Vizio store all across the country where somebody's going to walk in, they're going to see it on display there and say, wow, that's a really nice looking, out of all the options, out of your Acers and a bunch of garbage, a bunch of plastic laptops, they're going to say, oh, this is a nice looking laptop.
I know our church, we have 3 Vizio flat screen TVs. No, 4 flat screen TVs throughout our church. I mean, how many churches Vizios? I mean, we're watching right here.
We see Chad bigger than life.
That's
on
right,
a
on
big
this
37-inch Vizio right
and
here.
And so Vizio. And when I go to Walmart and I see Sanyo and I see Vizio, which one am I going to buy? I'm going to buy Vizio because
That's my point.
There is a certain
They've
thing
done
with
good.
their
Maybe
brand.
we've reached the
done good.
place where IBM players are ready for that. But let me say that what has traditionally been one of the strong suits of IBM is this fact that it was a frontier. It was open. Your architecture was open. You could tweak it. You could buy from this source and that source and combine them together and do whatever. But if what I'm seeing here carries through, this is a finished product. You're not going to be allowed to tweak it much.
No, it's a PC.
It's a computer.
It's a computer.
Yeah.
What are you talking about here? IBM, this thing of IBM and Big Blue, this is from way back in the 80s. We're going back 2 decades here in that conversation. No, it's a PC.
Oh no,
there's nothing.
No, we're
it's
not.
not closed.
We're going back
not
as late as last year. Do you read Computer Shopper?
No.
The Bible? No.
No.
Of course not, because you're sucked up on Apple.
You notice how he did that? Hey, do you read the Computer Shopper, the Bible? So no, he's made you say no to reading the Bible.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve.
Right. Absolutely.
No, listen.
It's a PC.
I'm excited about this.
Me too. If I woke up and something happened and my philosophy of I really like Apple products, it's
like
both
if you
great
came to your
hardware and
senses,
software.
like Nebuchadnezzar
or if
awakening.
something changed.
Yeah.
probably the first, once these things are out, the first one out of curiosity that I would check to say, what would I think about buying a PC? This would be one of the first places I would look, because it's going to be good hardware. I would guess by the look of that.
Absolutely.
And they've done a great job in the consumer market with televisions by getting a not always the highest quality, but a great quality product at a price that's within the consumer's realm of possibility in a way that nobody else has done. They'll do the same thing in the PC market. There's the whole IBM and closed system thing that we're talking about.
You should be championing this,
My
Steve.
point.
You're
my
a
point is
PC
this.
guy.
My point is this: that simply, if they really want an authentic commercial between Mac and PC, it ought to be TG&I. It would be Bloodsport. That's all I'm saying. People would do it pay-per-view to watch us advocate for our position.
Matthew would eat your lunch, because what he would do is he would just have the two of you boot up your
That's
computers
right.
at the same time. And by the time the
bring your
commercial
PCs.
ended,
No, wait,
your
no, wait.
computer still
No, wait.
wouldn't be up and
No,
running.
that would be a fair contest if we both started out laying out the same kind of money for our computers. All right, come on, big boy. Bring it back.
How many times have you repaired or put new equipment in it, or how old are you talking about? Like for me,
Well,
my computers, every computer that I own is now over 5 years old. It's
How
an
many
Apple
years
that
old do
still
you
is
think
running
this
great.
is? How many years old is this laptop?
Look at the
That's
bottom of
7.
it; it'll tell you.
7 years old.
I don't know, but it's still
And you've
got
had it for the last
Maybe 8
7
years
months.
old. But what I'm saying is it's still running. So
let's move on here.
no,
Yes.
the blood has not yet flown.
Computer-related, Rupert Murdoch's really upset with the Obama administration over
Yeah.
SOPA. Can I tell you that I think the administration has this right?
Yes,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
It's blowing up Twitter today.
Patrick Norton of Revision 3 put it this way. He said, there is a problem with piracy, but he said what SOPA is the equivalent of a farmer saying we've got a problem with rats dropping a nuclear bomb on the farm. And especially, I'm not an expert on this, but especially as it relates to DNS servers, their ability to just shut a DNS server down. And so your DNS server is this place where all your requests go, and then it goes out and it links you up.
Let me try to give a little bit thorough. I don't know. Maybe I'll get way over people's heads, but let me try to explain DNS.
You're over my head.
Bring it down to the common man.
When you go to your web browser, in your URL area, if you typed in, say, Facebook, there is no place called Facebook. It's on a server that's assigned a number. It's called its IP address.
No.
So, exactly.
Facebook isn't real?
Well, the Facebook is just a name. That
we'll
URL,
talk about Santa Claus later. Okay. Go ahead.
That URL is just a name. So you type that in. The DNS server is it pings that first. Before you ever get to Facebook, the DNS server translates those words or those letters, Facebook, to say, okay, that is hosted at a server at this number location, and then forwards you on to that. So if they stop stuff at the DNS level, it keeps you from accessing stuff altogether. It completely blocks things. It's great if you use like OpenDNS and you want to do web filtering and you use like their pornography filter from OpenDNS. It's great. You're blocking pornography at the DNS level, which is very, very effective. But when you talk about, it's
here again. I think the simplistic way to just view this is just that your requests leave your computer and go to that server. It gets it. The DNS server gets you where you need to be, and with the SOPA and let me tell you, we had YouTube would not let us run one of our episodes. And it was because we put a clip from Channel 4. And so
the news conglomerate,
right?
It tagged that, knew that it was from that news conglomerate that owns Channel 4, and blocked our episode. Now we are a news commentary show, and according to fair use, we should be allowed to play a clip and have commentary on that kind of stuff. But it's a hassle to try to get it all figured out. So what could happen is SOPA, they could say, oh wow, they have some content from Channel 4. The Techology Show could be blocked at a DNS level, which would let nobody anywhere ever access it, and it could just go dark.
Well, Chad could put in a complaint and say they're using some of my material over there, and so we're guilty until proven innocent.
It is a massive assault on our constitutional rights,
And
especially the freedom of speech.
And we would all agree that on this issue, the Obama administration is getting it right, and Rupert Murdoch is getting it.
Yeah, I disagree.
Wrong.
And let me say this: that Steve a few weeks ago tried to put me onto something else here to write my senator, and the window passed. And after it was gone, I felt like I really didn't do the right thing. And so on this one, I mean, I have already all the senators know where I stand on this in South Carolina, and my House of Representatives congressman knows where I stand on this.
If there's a restraining order, let's just hypothetically, if there's a restraining order against me for senator, can I write him a letter? Am I allowed to do that? I thought those charges were dropped.
Today, a lot of different places are protesting SOPA. There's another bill that is called PIPA, which is a very similar bill. It's a revision or another version of this in Congress. A lot of sites are protesting that. Even Google, if you went to google.com, you'll notice that the logo is covered up by a big black box, because a website like Google, if they even were to link to, like, their search site, so if they were to link to copyright material, someone could put up a protest and Google could be gone. And I mean, what would that mean for us? It's a crazy thing. Another interesting story that's along the same lines: a guy out of the European Union was extradited to the U.S. and faces imprisonment for having a website, I believe it was called TV Shack, where he didn't host anything copyrighted, but he had links to copyrighted material. So it was a place where I think you could go watch bootleg streams of live television stations. He didn't ever host them there, but he would put up the links where you could go and okay, NBC, and if you click that link, it would take you to the site that was doing that. So he is being, what do you do? He's linking to copyrighted material. Does that make him a violator of copyright to link to it? And it's a big discussion. He faces a lot of serious charges.
In the real world, the equivalent is, I'm going to tell you where you can go get it.
Yeah. I'm not going to sell it to you, but I can tell you where you can go get it.
I don't know. I mean, I just think that we are in the midst of a big paradigm shift with media. I think Hollywood doesn't quite know what to do. Music producers don't know what to do. It's interesting, if we've ever played anything on our show from CNET or the Twit Network, it never gets flagged. But their philosophies, especially the Twit Network, is we want it out there.
Yeah.
If you play something that's ours, that's good press for us.
Yep.
You're driving people to us.
And so if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, we want you. Put this on your website.
Make all the money you can off of it. Please do it.
Just all right.
Well, last weekend, the dream died for Tim Tebow and the Denver Broncos as they were manhandled thoroughly.
Yeah. That was the Clemson West Virginia game of the NFL.
That was ugly, boys. The Clemson game. I'm sorry.
hey, he's a Clemson fan here, Chad. Did you know that?
Born and bred.
But I watched that game just because I'd met Tony down there in South Carolina, and I was like, man, I got to watch Clemson. And then literally I was watching it, I'm like, I think Tony's out there playing for Clemson.
Well, I pulled a Roy Williams because I left before the game was over. I left him on the field to suck it up.
Hey, Chad, I had a guy in the church, he's a big Clemson fan, and he said, when I first saw him, he started talking about the bad reffing for the game. And I said, okay, I'll give you that. Of the 70 points, how much was due to bad reffing? All right, go ahead.
Monday I tweeted, I had a rough day Monday, and I just said, boy, I feel like Monday just laid 70 points on me. But we are in this thing to where, Tebow is getting a lot of press. Justin Bieber just got a lot of press last week. He got a big Jesus tattoo on the back of his leg. If you have daughters under the age of 12 and you've seen the Justin Bieber movie, they're very open about their faith. He learned how to play drums from his church's worship team who practiced at his mom's apartment. And so these are celebrities, and they're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But I do think that young Christians do see them. Mm-hmm. And the bad thing is when people like that fall or do something ridiculously stupid or say something stupid, it's crushing. It's crushing to students. But I think they can be an inspiration to people.
I think Matthew has been dead on with this Tim Tebow thing. And so far, Tim Tebow, what's been great about him is he's not going to let you put him on a pedestal. He's just not. He knows he doesn't belong there. I think he hasn't the right perspective. I mean, these things, I don't know. When I read this story, I kind of had mixed emotions about it, because does Christianity get a bump out of this kind of stuff? Yeah, I think it does. But like you said, Heath, also there are dangers in this too. Putting people up on a pedestal they don't belong.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things they're mentioning in the chat room is that, Justin Bieber, who is 16, 17 years old, just said the other day, he didn't really feel the need to go to church. And I would totally disagree with that. And again, I would say that's the kind of stuff you get when you put a microphone in a 16 or 17-year-old's face. I'm glad I didn't get interviewed by the
Who
national.
Clearly isn't. He's not a theologian.
Right.
If you said, give us your view on ecclesiology,
well,
he may not even know what ecclesiology means, let alone give a view on it.
Right, and he did an interview in Rolling Stone that made me cringe on some of the things they asked him about. And but people who are non-Christian look at people like that and just wait for them to slip up. And so it's kind of weird, because I think a lot of times it is the faithless media, faithless people who put these people in the spotlight, put them on a pedestal in the hopes that they are going to fall.
You think so?
Sometimes I do think that.
A pretty cynical view there, Heath.
Well, yeah.
Well, who knows? I mean, I don't know. Real quick, I don't want the show to get away from us without going to the quote that Steve read from Martin Luther King Jr. That is a powerful quote. And it really, you can see how way before the civil rights movement is the fires are stoked. I mean, he's already writing things where he's challenging the church in ways that the church needed to be challenged.
On Martin Luther King Jr. Day, John Piper, let's get our Calvinist jokes out of the way, gave away a copy of his book Bloodlines on his blog.
That because of
and so I was reading through that, and he had some excerpts from a letter from the Birmingham jail. Oh my word! And just the fact that the white evangelical pastors, their view on stuff, and him just laying it out for them, saying this is the reality. Oh, it's extremely powerful.
I had a conversation this week, more than one, with people who were kind of critical of MLK Day, and it makes me sad, because I think that oftentimes in the evangelical church, let me say this, the white evangelical church, we have not taken enough time to appreciate the other side of this, and what it's like to live in a society where you're constantly marginalized, and you can talk about character things that you disagreed with Martin Luther King Jr. There may be some things there, but I don't think you can argue for a moment. But what he was courageous. He said things that needed to be said to our culture at a time when they desperately needed to be said, and I think that to honor his life and what he's done is very appropriate, especially in the scheme of American history.
Yep, I was my girls brought home some worksheets they had done Monday in talking about Dr. King, and it was cool to know, and I wish they wouldn't just tell them. I wish they would teach them the context of that. I wish they wouldn't just say, "Hey, that Monday in January, we're going to study about this guy." But I wish, in the context of American history, I mean, American history is a lot like church history. I mean, there's a lot of things that we're not very proud of in the way that we treated people and the way we did things. But we have to learn from that, and we have to rise above that, and we have to honor those who helped us make very significant changes in how we did that.
You know, something that's interesting for me, and you guys may or may not have had the same experience, but as I go back through my education growing up, I was in public school for a while, I was homeschooled for a while. I don't think I ever got context of anything. Like, I'm not sure how do you teach children context of stuff? Do you guys, as you look back on that, about learning about these kinds of things, did you grasp the concept at the time, the big picture?
No, not until I was an adult.
Yeah,
and that's a good point. Yeah, not
so
until I was
I don't
adult.
know. I don't know how the best way to accomplish that would be, Heath. But it is an interesting thought. We got to wrap this up, guys. It's 10 o'clock.
All right. Listen, just want to let you know next week. Now, are we right on our date here? Matthew DePrez on the 25th?
Yep, we got him next week on the 25th. We're going to be talking about kind of two things. Number one, some new discipleship strategies they're using in their youth ministry, and also some new intergenerational ministry stuff. And so that's going to be great. And then the following week, we're going to have Scott Simmons from Wesleyan Headquarters talking about youth ministry and the Follow Tour from last year and the Follow International Wesleyan Youth Convention this December. So some good stuff lined up.
All right. On February the 8th, we have Dr. Tom Arminger. He's the new CEO of World Hope International. We tried to get him on last fall, but at the time life was so crazy for him, he asked that we wait till 2012, and so he has graciously agreed to go ahead and join us on the 8th. All right, Chad, it has been a blast having you. We appreciate you so much taking time out of your schedule to come and talk with us.
Yeah, love it. Love the show and would love to come on anytime.
All right, man. Well, we'll keep you on a short list. Let our listeners know where they can find you.
I am on Facebook.com. I think it's Facebook.com / right there, Chad.McCollum. And our church website is not the best one in the world, but it's somewhat current. www.compasschurchonline.org. We have the longest church web address in the denomination.
All right, very good. Heath, where can our listeners find you?
They can go to heathmullican.com, and going to be posting some new stuff this week, so pretty good stuff.
Steve?
Find me on Google+.
All right.
Google Plus.
Yes, Google Plus. It's wonderful. You can find me
Google
at
Plus is like a
MatthewTG.
7th grade dance where nobody's dancing.
Oh, come to the dance, big boy. It's like an exclusive club where I am.
It's a lot quieter, which actually helps throughout the day. You don't have to be bombarded with everything. MatthewTG.com for me. Back to you, Tony, sir.
All right. Facebook.com /AKC64. And if you want to do further research on anything we discussed today, you can find all the links to the story we covered at our website, thetechnologyshow.com. If you want to contact us, please send your emails to thetechnologyshow@gmail.com, or better yet, leave us a voicemail by calling us at 3049-TEOLOGY. That's 304-986-5649. Leave us a message. We may even play your comments on the air. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Adios.
Sayonara.